person that we're going to be speaking today, as they say in Hindi, inki tareef bahut lambi hai. There's really something wonderful. It's a pleasure and privilege to be speaking to our guest for the day, Dr. Gopichand Katragadda, under the Going Digital series. Thank you for joining this discussion, Gopi. It's a real pleasure to have you here today. So,
my pleasure.
Yeah, so Dr. Gopichand Katragadda is the founder and CEO of Myelin Foundry. It's an AI company with a vision to transform human experiences and outcomes in the wellness as well as media and entertainment. He's an independent director of Bosch India Limited and also a member of the NASSCOM Governing Council for the Center of Excellence for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. So till about Jan 2019, he was the group CTO and innovation head of the Tata Sons. So there he facilitated the development of many pioneering products and services across the Tata Group. Before this, he was the chairman and managing director of GE India Technology Centre, where he helped grow their largest R&D centre, John F. Welch Technology Centre, to be amongst the world leaders in intellectual property generation. He's also the past chairman of the CII National Technology Committee and the CII Western Region Innovation Tech Task Force. He's a GE certified Six Sigma Master Black Belt. He's also authored a book on innovation titled Smash, which is currently in its second edition. So he has over 30 journal publications, 5 patents, several invited presentations and citations of his research work. He also holds a BE degree in electronics engineering from Bangalore University and an MS and PhD in electrical engineering from Iowa State University. So we are really speaking to one of the heavyweights of the industry, and really it's a privilege, as I said, to speak to you. Thank you for joining this conversation, Gopi.
Thanks, Siddharth. I worked hard to reduce the weight, actually. But
all right, great. So Gopi, thank you. As a starting question, we since the theme of this summit is about in the face of adversity, how can we find opportunities? How can we grow? Today, the world is being absolutely steamrolled by the COVID pandemic. Right, there are over 207 million confirmed cases as we speak, and millions of deaths. And this 207 million is like 3% of the world's population. Yet, we see that the NASDAQ, S&P 500, the Nifty, they're close to their lifetime highs, right? So other than the high liquidity in the system, maybe you could explain to us what really is happening here. What's corporate India doing in this crisis to grow?
Yeah. No, I think, Siddharth, it will make an interesting discussion, and I'm sure the students and the leaders joining in, future leaders joining, will also have opinions. So would love to hear their thoughts as well, not just questions. So the way I think about it is that there is reality and there is more reality. So if you think about the pandemic, it is real. There's no question about it. All of us have been impacted one way or the other. Many of us have had near and dear ones go through it. And many of us, unfortunately, also have had an impact of a life. So the pandemic is definitely real at this point of time. If you look at the markets, it is a reality in a different sense. It's a man-made reality. So if you talk to Yuval Harari, he will say that it is complete fiction. The valuation of the markets are things of similar to what fiction is made of. But we'll park that for now, and we'll come back to both these areas. I do believe that both these aspects are real, because if you ignore, one transforms to the other. So there's cognizance which we need to give for both aspects. But let's come to one level of reality, which is the pandemic. There is pandemic, which is definitely real. There is climate change, which we are seeing across the globe. And especially now, those who have been denying it are facing the brunt of it. So that is something that will not escape anybody, whether you close your eyes or not. Then there is regionalism, and While 10 years ago it was all about globalization, there is more and more regionalism and the need to contract the way we are thinking about the globe. And you see the recent events in Afghanistan included, it is driving towards that, and that is real. We see people falling off planes, that is real. And then at a different level of, but at the same, I would say, plane of reality is hyper labeled activism. So there is a lot of inclusion which people are striving to get, and that's again something which we need to make happen. But this is all happening at one level of reality. And then if you look at the industry, to your question, Siddharth, there is a semiconductor shortage. And the semiconductor shortage, there are many reasons for that. But industries such as the automotive industries are really struggling now to face up to the demand in the market, at the same time having a shortage of the raw material. And the reasons for this include the pandemic, the ability to project what the demand will be, and the markets, the semiconductor industry reacting to prioritize, let's say, consumer markets over automotive markets. And then when the automotive markets again say that no, we need it, then it takes some time for that supply to come back. So it's related in a manner to the pandemic. It's also related in a manner to the regionalism, where let's say that there is a difficulty of China, and everybody has a China plus one strategy, which means that if I have supply in China, I need a plus one and get it from somewhere else. In that whole process, again, that takes time to establish the new methods. So again, there is impact into semiconductor industry, which in turn impacts the automotive industry. And so if you think about it, these are all interconnected. Along this same direction, you have climate change. I say same direction because the pandemic has occurred in 100 years, but also there will be people who will say that as we are, if we don't become more responsible towards the climate, pandemics will occur more and more, because our interaction with other species are changing to a place where the earth has its own mechanism of self-control and punishing those who do not behave responsibly. So from an industry point, there is electrification, which is happening. So there is electric vehicles, two-wheelers, four-wheelers, and so on. Again, from a pandemic standpoint, the age of biology has arrived. The age of biology meaning that today, if I am an electrical engineer, which I am, I still cannot but have biological knowledge in order to meet the demands of the markets. And it's not just in health. The age of biology has arrived in all its glory. So if you're in the energy business also, you might need to know how to produce algae with more hydrogen than carbohydrates, so that you can use hydrogen for the electrification. So this is all interconnected. In all this, there is AI, and artificial intelligence has a role to play across the board. But given the hyper-labeled activism, there is ethical AI, which is required. There is an inclusive AI, which is required. And then there is fake news, and hence there is a need to triangulate for what is real. Pretty much it is guaranteed that if you have a forward from someone, it is fake. If it is not part of known publication, it is fake. So in this environment, what is news, what is not news, right? So these are all interconnected realities. I'll talk about more, but I'll pause there. I'm sure your question of what are the markets doing? The markets have, like you said, liquidity, which moves, let's say, from a China or other markets into India, or liquidity which goes into gold and comes back. And these are all things which are real, but you need to take it with a pinch of salt, right? If there are startup companies valued at $12 billion, and the market in 2028 is going to be $10 billion, you have to take it with a pinch of salt. If there are industries struggling to get semiconductors, and their share values are going up, then you have to look at what is the truth behind it. So I would take it, but the fact that we have to address climate change, the fact that we have to be prepared for the next pandemic, these are all things that we have to take even more seriously.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a wonderful answer, Gopi. Just, talking about the India story, I'd like to just delve into the India's much talked about digital and demographic dividend, right? Which is seen as a competitive advantage by many. So can you just explain to us what this is exactly and what are the opportunities this demographic and digital dividend could throw up for Indian corporates of startups?
Yeah, Siddharth, I'm sure you have more answers than I have, but I will take a crack at it. So yeah, we have what I would say are who are coming into the workforce now, who are digital natives. And I think that we need to look at digital natives and their ability to contribute to the economy in a whole new way. And the digital natives themselves have to drive that whole new way of thinking. The digital natives are also more collaborative and more transparent. And at the same time, while they're transparent, they want to decide where they want to be transparent about. So it doesn't mean that they are going to be willing to give up their privacy. What does this mean is that the opportunities hence are going to be along these lines, so that the tools that we use are more transparent, enable data privacy, enable collaboration, and so on. From a standpoint of what is the digital dividend and the demographic dividend, maybe they converge in that the youth of our nation are also digital natives. They're also AI conversant. So I've been very happy to see the quality of the people I've been hiring to be able to very quickly put into motion something which is meaningful in the market. And the need to build further will be for these digital natives to also be conversant with the edge. Edge being not just having AI work in the cloud, but in the future, it will be about an automotive is a thinking machine. So the AI needs to work on the automotive. So in terms of being able to leverage this demographic dividend as well as digital dividend, we will need to be at the top of the value chain in terms of the market. We cannot be a lag market. We cannot be thinking about implementing and following and still be able to leverage this dividend the way it best can be.
Very interesting. So you spoke about the demographic dividend, which is the very vast number of people who are young in this country today, much more than any other country in the world. At the same time, many of them are digital natives. They are already digitally enabled. They're tech savvy. They understand technology. These are like ingredients, right? They're ingredients for success. So what would be the recipe for leveraging these ingredients? How will this happen amidst the current crisis?
Yeah, so first and foremost in any recipe, I guess, you have to take the ingredients and prepare them. So it's not that you just put the ingredients all together at the same time in oil and put in some mustard alongside and it works. So those who have cooked Indian know that you start a slow heat and put the mustard in. You'll need to know when to put the onions in or chilies in next. And only so there is a way to go about doing things. Some of the ingredients need to be pre-prepared also, right? So from that standpoint, I think one aspect of the whole recipe will be to have the pan at the right temperature, which means what? In the case of being able to leverage these ingredients, the markets in India have to be lead markets. I cannot be satisfied with products developed for other markets with minor modifications, take it into India and expect that innovation will happen. Innovation will happen in the close proximity of the markets. We have very large markets. However, they're not lead markets. By that, I mean that we are not determining what this product should look like. So if a Facebook is developed elsewhere, we will take it. If the same Facebook at the same point of time were developed here, it would not have seen the success because we are not a lead market. But those things are changing now. And hence that is the hot pan. So it has to be at the right temperature, neither too hot nor too cold. Second is the cook. If you see a good chef cooking, they will use their hands. They will get a feel for the ingredients. They will smell the ingredients. They will know how much of the ingredients to put, because each ingredient is going to be very different, being the same. If it's a chili, you cut the chili to know how old or young it is by the crispness of the cut, the smell it emits, and you put a little, you will see even more what needs to happen. And that comes with domain expertise, right? So the cook needs, it's about the ingredients, but you also need to bring in the domain expertise. So while we might be good at AI, if we are not understanding, let's say, a power plant where we want to implement AI, or an automotive where we need to implement AI, or the banking and financial industry where we need to implement AI, we will always be implementing. We will not be at the top of the value chain. And finally, we need to be constant learners, and that is important for the students. Whatever expertise you develop is important, but it is important today. What is most important is the constant ability to learn, right? So this is what will make the ingredients of demography and digital meaningful, and for us to be at the top of the value chain. Otherwise, we can always be a body shop. And I will caution against it. We will slip into that very easily. But those days of getting jobs into India, there are companies who have done it, and all the power and glory to them, and we thank them. But this is the time to be at the top of the value chain. We have earned it, we deserve it, and we owe it to those who have given us the luxury to be able to deliver products and services which are global first.
Great. So Gopi, this brings up a thought in my mind that, at one level, preparing these ingredients, the government has a role to play. But if you look at the corporates, the startups, or even educational institutes like the IIMs, or even any other institutes across the country, what should we be doing? Because government has precious little we can do, right? But what can the corporate, startups, and educational institutes be doing to ensure that we don't miss this once in a lifetime opportunity of using this confluence of the digital and demographic divide?
Yeah. So Siddharth, I'll also talk about the government, because you don't know who is listening, and always there is a hope that the message carries. But yeah, we do have a greater responsibility as to large corporations and startups as well. If you think about the government and the government's role, they have done a little in the past few years, which is useful. So I'm saying that in the positive sense. And we have actually, through CII and NASSCOM, been able to influence some of this. Just for example, today, and just before this meeting, I'm looking at a defense innovation challenge. And they have put out the challenges which you can respond to, and they will provide grants. And you are providing the defense capability, while the same thing can be commercially used for your business benefit without any restriction. And they encourage doing that. This is based on a model called Small Business Innovative Research in the US. While we might have a little more to go in terms of the transparency on how these grants are allocated and who is getting it, who is not, how can we improve to get it next. It's a great first step, right? This has happened in the last couple of years. Similarly, CII through Geeta, it's a program called Geeta, is encouraging collaborations with other nations. So 50% of the budget requirements for India will be provided by CII. And 50% of the budget requirements in another country will be provided by the partner country's government. So CII, again, through DST, so it's a government funding. Then there is Uchchatar Avishkar Yojana and various other programs which are academic oriented, which mandate that you need a industrial partner in order to access government money. So these are all the right steps and good steps. And I need to tell you that I started my startup 2 years ago, and within 2 years, I got a patent awarded, which is unheard of in any other country even. And that is because there's a Tatkal scheme which the government has introduced for startups in order to accelerate the grant of the patent. The thing is, not everybody knows about all this, and hence it is not as well leveraged. But there is more the government should do and can do, and will continue to ask. The tendency is for the government to allocate money to many small programs, and that is absolutely a wasteful way of allocating money to leverage the digital talent pool that we have and the demographic dividend that we have. We need to be brave and bold and say that these are the few areas where we'll invest big, and bring in the folks who are capable of delivering in those areas. So few and big investments in areas such as agriculture, water, climate change, right? So corporations are not going to invest in these areas much. So if you want to make a difference in climate change, it is good for the government to invest, create businesses which are meaningful. And so there is a role that government has to play. Large corporations should invest on opportunities which will mature into the market 2 to 7 years from today. So they need to be having that appetite to invest in R&D. And that is the biggest lacuna that we have right now, is large corporations' investment into R&D is abysmally low. In fact, I have done research to show that if you invest less than 0.5% of your revenue into R&D, it's of no use. You better not even invest anything, because that money goes waste. So it is not that a small amount of money will be useful. It's actually total waste. So you have to make meaningful investments for the long term in the industry. Industry has got a great appetite to go and buy foreign companies, but not invest in R&D in their own company, which has to change. The total R&D investment in India is 0.7% of GDP, which is not acceptable, right? And of that, more than half is government's investment. So this is a lacuna from the industry which has to be fixed. Academically, we have a lot to achieve in that our R&D and innovation capabilities are very theoretical. In order for startups, for example, to succeed, there are ecosystems where the core part of the ecosystem is a university. There is something built around a Stanford. There is something built around an MIT, right? Hence, we need to increase the compensation for faculty. We need to bring in global faculty. We need to encourage the best of India to join faculty. There are great people who are today faculty, and they need to be freed up from all the bureaucracy and the politics of the institutions for academics to be able to contribute. And that is the starting point. If you do not have a good research program in your academic institutions, then nothing else will follow. Neither there will be startups which are meaningful, nor industry which is capable of research, nor a government which can invest meaningfully.
Makes sense. Just a quick side question on the R&D aspect that you spoke about, Gopi. You said that just 0.7% of GDP is being spent on R&D. So one question would be, what is an acceptable percentage for a country as large as India? And second question, again related to R&D itself, the fact that people are not spending on R&D. It's probably because everyone is driven by quarterly returns. Everyone is looking at EPS and so on. So the pressure to keep that high probably cuts into the the long-term investment in R&D. So what's your thought on these two things?
Yeah, the decent place to be at in terms of R&D investment is 2%. In fact, we were slightly above 1% several years back. But what has happened is our GDP grew and our R&D remained the same, rupee-wise. And hence, while the number remains the same, the percentage diminishes, right? So it has dropped from that standpoint. So 2% is where a country like ours should be. Europe and US are 4% and ahead. So that's okay. We don't have to get there right now, but 2% is a good place to be. You're right that people are quarter by quarter focused, and that is what needs to change. We need to be leaders. We need to be nation builders. We need to be thinking about wealth and not income.
Got it. Got it. So on a different track slightly, Sundar Pichai of Google, he's been quoted saying that India will be a global player in the digital economy. So you spoke about value chain earlier. So at what point of this value chain do you see India dominating? And what is the role of innovation in making this happen?
Yeah. So Sundar Pichai is absolutely right. And however, the role that we play needs to be at the top of the value chain. So nobody pays attention to that. We'll play a significant role, could be that we do 80% of the work and get 20% of the money. And that is absolutely not acceptable, should not be acceptable to anybody listening in, right? In order for us to be at the place where we do 20% of the work and get 80% of the money, and there's nothing wrong with money, by the way, we need to be looking at innovation. So to your question, without innovation, we'll be doing 80% of the work and getting nothing for it, right? So we'll be a dominant player in terms of the percentage of slave labor that we will provide, as opposed to actually thinking about the future of the globe, given the digital nature. So if the pandemic has driven us to be socially distancing, are we thinking about no-touch solutions for the globe? You need not even open the car with the handle. You need not press the elevator button. So these are all things which are very simple. But really, in order for us to succeed, we need to think that digital is one aspect of the innovation triad. And that triad is digital, and there is materials, and there is biology. Innovation will happen at the intersection of these three. The innovation of the kind which matters will happen at the intersection of these three: digital, materials, and biology. So can we look at this intersection and see how we can think about the future, where we are doing 20% of the work and drawing in 80% of the revenue? That is when we will be able to say that we have honored the talent that we have sitting in this call today.
Superb. So tell me what needs to change, to bring about this thing. You spoke about global first products and services from India, not just Me Too offerings. So what do you think needs to change? Because this mindset of, investing in R&D, not looking at immediate returns, what needs to change at the ground level? What needs to change at the leadership level? What's your view on that?
Yeah, the easy answer would be we should change everything. But I think if you give it a thought experiment, we start with saying that rote education is important, but there is a point of time in education where we need to bring in the hands-on capabilities and make people solve problems early on, and diversify our educational syllabus. And even going further on, be it management would mean that you're going closer to the data, you're going closer to the customer, you're living with the customer in order to determine the market needs. If you're talking about engineering, if you can't hold a hammer or if you can't hold a soldering iron, maybe there are different other professions you should be looking at. If you have entrance exams solely based on solving a math problem or a physics problem, maybe that's not the best way to, in this large country of high talent, to pick up people who have a true engineering aptitude. We need to look at it differently. So first and foremost, if we were to think longer term, we need to start addressing the education, and the government has tried. They have brought in various thought-for jod kind of experiments in, but it needs to be done in a different way. It has to be done in a meaningful way. Not many people here would have heard of the thought-for jod kind of experiments with the government is doing, because it's too small, it's not meaningful. So it has to be done in a meaningful way. Then comes, maybe you have to, just like academics have been forced to get industry inputs on their research programs, which is like the Uchatar Avishkar Yojana program. Maybe the industry needs to, there was an attempt made by providing benefits if you're doing R&D, but there are different other ways to make sure that the industry's R&D is working, and you need to continue giving those benefits. But more so, I'm also okay if we say that just like CSR is a norm, that R&D is a norm, right? So I think that it has to become a habit. Ideally, it should come from the industry homes itself, but we are not in an acceptable place. So how do we get there is something that we should look at. A lot of activity on the startup side, which is happening. So I think that for startups to succeed, we need to focus less on unicorns and more on Nilgai or whatever our Indian version is. It is okay to be a $250 million organization. You don't have to aim for that billion, and everybody wants a unicorn. It's okay, but really we are not there yet. We need these wonderful startups to get to $250 million first, right? So in terms of actually, in fact, with startups, I'll put it another way. India should take a lead in making sure that we are focusing on what matters, revenues and profits, and not the valuation.
Absolutely. And that, kind of brings me to the last question for the day. I hope, more interaction will happen with the students as well. I'm going to leave time for that. So, when I was asking you that what's the role of corporate startups and educational institutes, in making this, in leveraging this demographic and digital dividend of India today. So you spoke about corporates, you spoke about the education, but not so much about the startups. So it'll be lovely to hear from you as a concluding point, that what is the role of startups in leveraging this dividend and in making India a dominant economic superpower. We don't want to be just a superpower, an economic superpower. We want to be a dominant one. Like you said, we don't want to be just doing, getting 20% of the work for doing 80%, 20% of the margin for making 80% of the grunt work. We want to do the reverse ratio. So what's the role of startups in making this happen?
So I think, Siddharth, the role of a startup and the clusters of startups is to create clusters of confidence. So we need to have a demography which is not only young and digital, but which is confident for the right reasons. So the startups actually help build those skills the hard way, but the only way is by making mistakes and by facing up to the mistakes and by falling and by standing up and going through the various aspects of the corporate realities in real time. That gives you get well done. You become confident. So creating that clusters of confidence is what startups can do. By that I mean that if you are thinking of autonomous vehicles, you will think about the Bay Area. That is because there is a cluster of confidence which the startups there have built, and there is a gravitation of global talent with that aptitude into that cluster of confidence. So I do need the people on this call to think about it a little hard. Confidence doesn't mean false confidence. It's based on what you have learned and earned. So that's important for startups. Startups also create employment in small denominations, but they create employment. And also they create the ability to grow. The good thing is Indian startup ecosystem is just flourishing quite well at this point of time. And there are pockets like Pune, there are Bangalore, Delhi, Mumbai, where this is quite apparent. The energy is very high. The ability to be in this cluster and get ideas is very high. What we need still in this to complete the picture, of course, starting with individual enterprise. The startups are built by individuals who have individual enterprise, but they depend on corporate excellence. So if startups are working with larger corporations, which we have to, and they're saying that, okay, we will make payments in 1 year. That doesn't work in a startup ecosystem. So corporations need to have programs which are suitable to encourage startups, get paid for what they've already delivered. Governance excellence. If you have a program like I mentioned, and there is no transparency of how things are getting allocated, that's a full waste of taxpayers' money. This is nobody's money. It is my money. It's your money. So we have a right to that money to deliver a better nation, right? So we shouldn't be ashamed to say, tell us how these monies are getting allocated. And then we have to demand academic excellence from our academic institutions in research. We should demand that academic institutions be freed from political and bureaucratic issues so that the researchers can focus on research. This is what will make startups be able to deliver what they can deliver.
Fantastic. Gopi, thank you for these wonderful inputs. I think a lot of gems that came out today while you were speaking. And I'm sure the students of IIM Indore, IIT Indore have benefited significantly by listening to some of these gems coming from you. There are a couple of questions that have come up, on the chat. So since we have a few minutes left, I thought let's just go through some of these questions. So we have Tamanna Mahajan asking, in a fast-moving industry where R&D is the key, what is the impact of external influences?
Yeah, if you don't mind, Siddharth, I'll use a quick chart which will help illustrate that very. Yeah,
please.
I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, so just thinking about the question, external influences in this case are geopolitical trends and consumer trends. And also, if you think about fast-moving technologies, it is an issue because people are worried, where should I invest my time and money? But if you start tracking things at a science level, science moves slow and steady. And if you are able to track sciences of interest to you and the trends of interest to you, then you will be able to bring the two together in a meaningful way in R&D, in startups. And I can spend a lot of time on this chart, but I'll leave you with that thought that there are two ways to do research and innovation. You move from the trends to the solution, or you move from technology to the solution. 90% of us will move from the trends to the solution to be successful. Only a few of us, once in 100 years, will be able to push technology into a solution. It's not unheard of, but it is a very uphill battle. So if you think about what are the trends, okay, pandemic, what does it mean? It means social distancing. It means zero touch solutions, virtual presence, and how do I meet those needs? What is the digital, what is the material, and what are the biological aspects of how I can provide for something like that. Biology includes psychology, by the way. So that is the way to think about the question which was asked.
Great. There's another question from Pankuri Agarwal. She is asking, how can the entrepreneur make sure that they are solving the problem using the right research?
Yeah, so the research will have multiple flavors in this audience. Research could mean market research. Research could mean technical research. So I think it's a good question. The important thing to do upfront is do complete landscaping of what you're trying to, first of all, what you're trying to solve and what your solution is. By landscaping, I mean including what competitors are doing from a market standpoint, but also what technologies are growing and where is your contribution going to leverage the strengths that you bring to the table.
Great. There's a question from Robin Cherian. She asks the role of unorganized sector in the demographic dividend will reduce in the coming future as we are entering a digital era. So it's a question whether the role of unorganized sector in the demographic dividend will reduce as we are entering a digital era.
See, there are a few ways to look at this. Unorganized sector can get organized, which means they're doing the same jobs, but they're in the radar screen. They're getting paid in a transparent way. And they're getting their jobs in a transparent way. So, for example, if you look at an MTurk or whatever be many equivalents in India, the ability to reach out to talent wherever it is, or labor wherever it is, or truckers wherever they are, or trucks wherever they are. This means that, or electricians wherever they are. This means that the unorganized sector is not disappearing. They're becoming more enabled, and I hope that's what will happen. Even if chai wala is an unorganized sector, and if they can use, let's say, Paytm or the Phone Pay, and they do now, everybody does. They will have a QR code. Everybody does. Hence, they come into the mainstream, which is not bad at all. They are not. The goal will be that they are not losing their jobs. It's just that they're enhancing their ability to get paid for it and be part of the mainstream.
Fantastic. Next question is from Lok Raj. As you said, regionalism is growing. How do you feel this will impact the dream of becoming a dominant superpower?
Yeah, so I think, Siddharth, you didn't necessarily mean a dominant superpower. We don't want to have Russia and US or a China scenario anymore. I think we are all comfortable with sharing wealth and glory. But at the same time, we will need to protect our borders. We need to protect against being taken advantage of. And we still have to go to give our citizens the lifestyle which is minimal and not subhuman, if you would. So I think that my dream is not to make India a dominant superpower. My dream is for India to lead the world into a shared sense of responsibility for not only humans but also for all the other species that we share this wonderful planet with.
Fantastic. I think that's a very elevating thought to conclude this discussion.